They will tax the middle class out of existence. There is a $1 trillion problem hanging over Australia, and there's only one group of people left to pay for it, and it includes me and it includes you. I'm not talking about a few bad years here. I'm not talking about a few bad decisions. There's structural uncertainty here, and the maths just don't add up. Why? Because for every younger worker paying tax, there are now more retirees drawing on pensions and demanding high-cost healthcare. Because our national debt has exploded past $850 billion and forecasted to be $1 trillion by the end of the year. And because three structural costs alone, debt, disability and defence, are all now growing faster than the Australian economy. And so the government needs more of our money, and they can't ask for it directly, so they have to take it somehow. In this video, I'm going to talk about how they intend to get that money. I'm going to talk about this hidden tax minefield that ensures $76,000 is baked into the average home, and that was after about 5 minutes worth of thinking. So obviously there's a lot more hidden taxes that go into that. I'm going to talk about a few things in the last 12 months that have been either put forward or talked about. There's actually a lot of things that have been put in the media over the last 12 months, so I'm not going to use everything. I'm talking things from superannuation raids to windfall gains taxes, and they're slowly squeezing the middle class out of existence. It's going to leave a world where there's either generationally wealthy or generationally poor. The ability to buy assets and achieve financial freedom has never been more important than it is right now in Australia. Okay, so let's start off with the reason of why taxes must rise in Australia, because it kind of gets left behind, but we're spending more money. The government's bills are growing faster than the economy, which means the only way to fill the gap is through higher taxes on individuals. So firstly, we've got an aging population. Fewer younger workers are paying tax, and more older people are drawing pensions and needing expensive healthcare and aged care. In 1994, there were only 12% of Australians aged 65 plus, and today it's about 17%, which highlights the need for us to raise more money, tax dollars, to cover these costs. Exploding debt. We all know about the debt. On a government level, there was massive borrowing during the COVID times, and ongoing deficits have created a mountain of government debt. And now that interest rates have been rising, it means repayments alone are costing a lot more as well. To give you an idea, in 2008, Australia's net debt was near zero. By 2024, net debt is near $850 billion. It's expected to be, as I said at the top, $1 trillion at the end of this financial year. We've got disability costs. The number of people needing high-cost long-term support is increasing, and the program costs are spiraling out of control. No need to mention the NDIS, which has gone from $0 billion to $45 billion in less than 10 years. Another stat to throw on that is in 2009, roughly 4 million Australians had a disability, and by 2022, that figure has risen to 5.5 million. That's an extra 1.5 million people needing support. We have trade vulnerabilities. This has been in the news the last 24 hours as of filming this. We have reliance on volatile commodity sales, things like iron ore to China. That provides unstable corporate tax and royalty revenue where we get it from the miners. When demand slows, the shortfall must be covered elsewhere. Now, exports to China doubled from 75 billion in 2014 to 150 billion in 2020. That is a massive amount, but since then, that's slowed to roughly, it's going to be $100 billion this year. So it's signaling a future revenue shock. And recently in the news, what's happened, I don't know if this is confirmed yet, China have decided to stop taking iron ore from BHP, which would further exacerbate that trend. Let's keep moving. Let's talk about defense spending. Obviously, the world is more uncertain. There's geopolitical risks, which is forcing Australia to commit massive multi-decade funds to military spending, things like subs, AUKUS, all of that sort of thing. Donald Trump is pushing countries to spend more on defence spending as well. To give you an idea, in 2010, the annual defence bill was around 25 billion, and now it's closer to be 50 billion and said to be rising significantly under current agreements. Okay, guys, before I talk about how we're already being squeezed out, I want to take a minute to say something that's really important to me. And it's the reason I do this content. As a mortgage broker, I could do content, breaking some debt, buy some investment properties. Not that there's anything wrong with that. However, the reason I do this content is because personally, I think Australians need to take more responsibility for their own financial future. But I think going deeper, things like the topics we're talking about on this video means there's either going to be rich and there's either going to be poor. Now, from my background, I've been able to see a reality where I could have been on the poor side of things. Fortunately, I won the lottery. I was born at a time where I could buy a house, invest, start a business, all of that sort of stuff. However, that's not the same for young people these days, which I might talk about more later on in the video. I think that can affect us socially. It can lead to higher rates of crime. It can lead to higher rates of mental unwellness, which I believe we're seeing already. That's not the only factor. Debt isn't the only factor contributing to those things, but it has a fair impact. So the reason I talk about this stuff isn't not to sell loans, obviously. It's to say, hey, there are problems with this country, but the solution that some people look for on YouTube is, oh, what's the silver bullet? Oh, we should vote these guys in. It's just not going to work, guys. And I think for me, it's just giving people that idea that personal responsibility is at the middle of it. And we all have the power to be the master of our own destiny, so to speak. Having said that, I am running a business. These videos do take time. So if you'd like to hear about these sorts of topics, please give us a subscribe. If you want to support me or my business and you need help with debt or you need help with something finance related, my links are below to have a chat with me. Okay, let's move on with the video because now I want to talk about all these taxes that we're already being forced to pay. They're just not as obvious as what we think they are, but actually if you sit down for 5 minutes, like I've done in this example, you can see it's pretty clear. I went through an example that's close to me in my industry, and that is building a house. So I've used 500 grand as an average. I've kind of, maybe it's a bit below that, but it's a good round number to start off with. I literally did this over 5 minutes. So let's look at some basic taxes there. So there's GST on the cost of the build. Let's say that's 45 odd grand built into that. You got stamp duty. So when someone buys a property, there's stamp duty built in. That's going to vary from state to state, but that's going to be 20 to 27 grand. Maybe a little bit less if they're just buying the land, but let's say they're buying a complete property. There's also development costs, council fees, infrastructure. If it's a big development, developers are paying for roads and utilities and parks and all of that sort of stuff. It's hard to estimate a cost there, but I put 10 to 25 grand per property. There's also payroll taxes. So obviously the builders are paying payroll tax for all their employees. So that's going to add 5 to 6% on the labour costs as well. So if you look at that, that's approximately 15% of the total property price, which is over 76 grand in tax alone. What do we get from that? I could keep on talking about this example for a while, but what do I get from that? Firstly, if the government wanted to use tax to incentivize supply of property, those taxes wouldn't be there. And it makes you question a number of things involving our tax, such as, okay, well, maybe the money we're giving out via negative gearing should be redistributed to give it out via cutting these taxes. And the other thing I want to talk about is this tax thing is so confusing because I'll give you an example, right? Okay, so the payroll tax, the builder pays the tax for the payroll, but the people who have earned the money from the builder, let's say someone's earning 100 grand a year, they're going to get charged income tax on top of that money they earned for building the property. So it's not directly built into the cost of property. even though it is because the builder's got to turn a profit, but it's where it makes it so confusing because it starts permeating through everything. I think we've got to come back and zoom back out and look at it and think the government, whether it be state, federal, or even at a council level, have to raise their money from somewhere. And it's going to take me to the next part of this video, which is they need to get new revenue. So let's talk about some things we've seen on the news recently. So firstly, we've got the superannuation tax on higher balances, proposed to be a 30% tax rate, up from 15% on new earnings from super balances over $3 million. Number one, yes, that is a high balance, but it does set a precedent that politicians can tinker with retirement savings. Maybe they don't make it 3 million next year, maybe it's made to 2 million next year. Pair that with inflation, and within 10 years a whole lot of us are going to be paying that double tax. Another tax is windfall gains tax here in Victoria, a tax of up to 50% on the uplift of land value when a property is rezoned. This is going to penalise development, it's going to make new housing supply slower, and ultimately it makes more homes more expensive. We've also got proposed things like increased vaping and tobacco excise, which is utterly useless given the fact that most of all of that stuff is owned by organised crime now. We've got things like proposed or debated water use taxes, such as the one targeting farmers' water use in Victoria, showing a willingness to tax core production inputs, which then raises the price of food. So it punishes it even more with inflation, which is described as a tax on the poor. You've got these other crazy proposed things like electric vehicle taxes in certain states to replace the tax that they're getting from fuel excise revenue. I mean, it literally makes no sense. It's just a money grab. I'm going to move on because I know everyone's time is valuable, but if there's any other taxes that are crazy and weird that's been talked about recently, and I know there's lots more, please put them in the comments. The inescapable conclusion here is, guys, that the structural need for revenue combined with the political reluctance to make any deep spending cuts means that taxes are going to go up. They're going to keep trying to find ways to tighten the belt and put the taxes up on us some way or another. Okay, to summarize all of this very simply, more people need help. There's fewer workers paying in. Big companies are minimising or avoiding tax completely. Australia has a debt that is growing. Health, defence and welfare costs are blowing out. This is what the nation faces economically. This video is about making a point. The middle class are going to pay for this. You either believe that or you don't. In my opinion, take that with a grain of salt. It's been a 40-year process driven by productivity, which is women coming into the workforce and creating more goods and services, but now being driven by debt. It's going to end up with people either being rich or either being poor. Here's the fact: the ability to buy assets has decreased, making it more important for the average person to buy assets. Now, that's not financial advice. None of my videos are financial advice. So why, in my opinion, is it more important to buy assets? Well, you need assets because you need a roof over your family's head. It's also important to buy assets because it also means being debt-free before you're 65 and being able to fund your retirement. It means helping your adult kids get a proper start because they don't have the same opportunities that we did. If we don't own assets, we're relying on the system to provide for us, and perhaps one day, all of a sudden, we come to a realization that we're working a life of servitude to a system that stopped giving us what we wanted a long time ago. I'm wanting to work with people who want to go after what they want because the system no longer is just handing it out. If you're wanting to get into your first home, or maybe pay down some debt faster, or maybe even retire comfortably and help your kids out, you can find my links below and discuss how I can help you. Cheers.